Well, hello there, everybody. We are live, and I am here today with my fellow lioness, Roar, Adrian, at Adrian K. Gledhill. I love the pink Adrian because look, your background is similar to mine, and I like matched mine, and you're standing out. I love it.
The sun actually came out today. So I'm so excited. After this, I'm going to go for a walk in the sun. It's windy and cold, but the sun is out. So I had to wear my sun
Yes.
clothes.
The sun is not out here. I wore my sun clothes anyway. I'm in Southern California. The sun is supposed to be out, but it's Memorial Day weekend and it's like not nice. It's not going to be nice. Anyway. Well, hey, thanks for agreeing to come on and chat with me on a Saturday. I guess for me, morning, for you, afternoon.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I wanted to talk a little bit about like healing on Carnivore. And I know you've had a lot of things to heal from. I feel like for me, it's mostly like I screwed myself up. I screwed up my own metabolism and my mental health with the way I was eating. But I know you've had even, I think, some bigger challenges. And I feel like sometimes they keep like the punches or the hits keep on coming for you.
Yeah,
so
it's been a
I don't know where you want to start with that, but I'd love to hear some of your journey, your story, what's worked, what you've discovered along the way.
So I've been overweight my whole life, and it was just weird because I would eat things and I would gain weight, but my sister wouldn't, and she was eating the same exact food. But yeah, I would get blamed like, oh, it's because you eat, And so from very little, there was like eating disorder behavior because I was being told I was fat because I ate food. And so, of course, that's so sad for a little kid to be like, okay, I can't eat. And I guess I have to eat less, and I always have to leave the table hungry. And, and then there was like eating shame. Like every time I would eat, there was shame because I'm 8 and that's why I'm big. It was really sad. It turns out I have a genetic predisposition, can't say the word, to not being able to live in moldy buildings or go to school in moldy buildings, all of which I was doing. So I was definitely inflamed. I had no idea what was happening, but now I look at my kids and now I see it. So I grew up for the first 10 years of my life in this super moldy, condemned house. Like it had a crawl space underneath it. We lived on the lake. Water was under there constantly, just a old moldy house. And then I went to a, 100-year-old school building. And so then at about 10 years old, I never put this together until recently. At 10, my dad met my stepmom because I was raised by a single dad, and we built a house. So we moved into a brand new house. And that's when I started losing weight a little bit. And I thought it was because I was working out, I was playing sports and stuff like that. I started learning how to restrict. That's no good. But anyway, I'm still struggling. It's not easy. I'm working out twice a day. I'm restricting my calories just to not be overweight. And then I go into college and I just bloom up, just 60 pounds. When everybody else is gaining 20, I'm gaining 60. That to me, if I see that in someone, I think red flag, your metabolism's broken, because guys are going to college and they're gaining 5-10 pounds, but girls are going to college and some of them, like me, are gaining 60 pounds. So there's obviously a metabolic difference there. It's not that I don't think it's that the girls are eating any worse. I actually think the guys are eating way worse. I was always eating diet foods. Anyway, so then I ended up on the TV show The Biggest Loser, and I lost about 66 pounds. But this is where, like that really screwed up my metabolism. That really screwed up my hormones. It was super fast, super restrictive, tons and tons of cardio. And I struggled after that. I like almost immediately gained 100 pounds. Like my metabolism and my hormones were dead. Then I go on to have kids and I struggle I'm just telling you all the red flags.
Because oh yeah, that's great. I know your story is like, there's a lot there. So absolutely.
It took me 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, depending on where you want to start the story, to figure out why all these things are an issue for me. So we go to get pregnant, and it takes over a year to get pregnant, which I know we're being told is normal, but I'm here to say I don't think that's normal. I don't think it should take 13 cycles to get pregnant. I
I
think
I
there's
was pregnant within the first 2 or 3 cycles every time, so that was not an issue for me, so I can tell you, and I have 2 kids, but I did have 3 pregnancies. I had 1 miscarriage, but each time I got pregnant, it was, like, within the first 2 to 3 cycles of trying.
yeah, so to go a whole year and
That's a
and the
long.
timing is kinda obvious to me. I did a ton
Mhm.
of studying on this to make sure we were doing everything right and no babies, and my first baby comes out and no milk. And, we're being told, "Just nurse, 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 and the milk will come, but if you supplement, then it's your fault your milk didn't come." And I'm here to tell you that that is a lie, in my opinion. Um, I believe your hormones switch, and I know people who chose not to breastfeed and their milk still came in abundantly.
Yeah.
So, this idea that we just need to starve our babies. So, I think it was on day 4 when my baby became unresponsive and we called 911. And
Mm.
now looking back, what had happened was I was so overweight when I was pregnant with him that he was in a metabolically disadvantaged state to begin with, and his blood sugar dropped really low because I was probably having high blood sugar, high insulin while I was pregnant with him. And then he comes
Mhm.
out and there's no food for 4 days. And I know they say that the babies are made for that, but not when they're coming in metabolically disadvantaged. So he was unresponsive and we gave him formula and then he pipped right up. They ran his blood sugar and they were like, this is dangerous. And then I kept pumping and nothing came out. Nothing.
Wow.
Like nothing.
Wow.
And we're on day 4 or 5 and nothing is coming out. And I pumped and pumped and they're like, "You just need to pump and nurse more, pump and nurse." I'm pumping and nursing around the clock. I forget what is it called? Where you nurse and then you pump or you pump
Mhm.
and then you nurse. I was double timing it 24 hours a day, and I think I ended up getting up to 10 ounces a day, which is like a third of a supply that a baby needs. And I'm
Right, that's
doing this
hardly
around the
anything.
clock. I'm eating all the food. I've got all the
Mm.
supplements. I'm drinking all the water. But of course, you can't sleep if you have to double pump. And your baby's fussy because they're starving.
Yeah.
Oh, so it
Yeah.
was a mess. So going to have baby number 2, and that one just happened like this. And I ended up with preeclampsia. And they just said, "Oh, it's a fluke." Okay, are we sure it's a fluke? But
Mm.
they told me it was a fluke. Um, and I spotted my entire pregnancy. They actually told me I was gonna lose her. Well, at 16 weeks, they
Mm.
said, "She's not gonna make it. You should just plan for your miscarriage." And praise the Lord, she came, and I ended up with preeclampsia. Again, no milk, like almost no milk. But this time I was trying even harder because I really wanted to feed my baby. So with David,
Mhm.
I made it 6 weeks and like, I don't even know if it was 10 ounces. It might have been 5 ounces. It was like nothing was coming. Like a third of an ounce was coming out every time I pumped. And I was doing this around the clock.
That's
Um,
exhausting, and already you've got a newborn that's exhausting, so, oh my gosh.
Yeah, so no milk. So baby number 2, I try even harder. I go to all the appointments. You hear I'm dragging this baby out of the house constantly, going to all this support and no milk. I
Mhm.
pump for 6 months because I want this baby to have whatever I can give her, which was like almost nothing. But I was like, this whole you quit because of mental health. I think a lot more people are suffering from low supply and then they're being told you just didn't try hard enough. Cause that's what I
Mm.
was being told is you just didn't try hard enough. So we go through a divorce. So in autoimmunity, sometimes there are trigger events. I had gastric bypass surgery. That's a trigger event. I lived in moldy house, trigger event. I had a very abusive marriage and a very post separation abusive divorce that's going on to this day. That is a trigger event. A horrible, like when somebody is hurting you and your children on purpose, and then you go to the court system and they are hurting you as well, playing along with all the games and acting like you're the crazy one and you're like, "I'm just asking for help. Please. This is abuse. I'm just asking for help." And then being told, "Nope. He seems like a really nice guy and you seem like a nut job because you're crying." Yeah, I'm crying because I'm in an abusive relationship here. Anyway,
Mhm.
another inflammation. Then I went curling one day and I slipped and I landed on my head and my body came out of my body and back in like a foot. This
Oh, geez.
Yeah. So that was like a really bad head injury that it was like 6 months later, I finally went in and I still had terrible concussion and they could see it in my eyes. And I had vertigo every time. I'm still not a person that looks up. So we got all these trigger events. I go to have baby number 3 and we actually got pregnant pretty easy, but we lost her at 20 weeks. And we were told that just happens sometimes.
Mhm.
And we had the genetic testing done. That was fine. I'd had my blood sugars done. That was allegedly fine. Nobody ran my insulin, just saying. But I just don't think that, and it's unfortunately, if you join, like there's late miscarriage because they call it a miscarriage at that age still. Late miscarriage support is happening every day now. Why is this all of a sudden this rare thing? It's rare to lose. Allegedly was rare to lose your baby after 12 weeks, and now it's happening like crazy. So to me, that's another indicator of autoimmunity. So then we go to get pregnant again, and it takes a year again. And then this time I've got a supportive husband. I've got even more tools. I've got a staff ready to go. I got all the stuff. He's bringing me my favorite foods to make sure that it's the best breast milk ever. No breast milk. So baby number 4, I guess it's baby number 5.
Right.
I cut all chemicals from my diet. No artificial anything, no natural flavors, no chemicals, only whole foods. I'm eating only vegetables and meat, and I hire a midwife, and I'm going to birth this baby at home because the only thing I hadn't tried yet was that they said, if you just need to be as natural and relaxed as possible. So they said skin to skin for 6 weeks, you'll have milk for sure. Birth at home, make it as natural as possible, and all your body will just do it. And so I birthed my baby at home in my bathtub in a blizzard. And the midwife got in a car accident on the way. This midwife was amazing too. She was one of the people that got me into carnivore kind of, because when I was pregnant, she said I needed to consume salt because of my preeclampsia. She said I needed to eat lots of butter. She said if I could eat 12 eggs a day, that'd be great. Tons of red meat and a little bit of organ is what she said. That was the focus, was beef, butter,
Wow.
bacon, and eggs.
Mhm.
And so I have this baby. I have all my tools. Everybody's coming to our house this time because the baby did not wear any clothes for 6 weeks because that was part of the deal. The baby just had to be on my naked chest for 6 weeks. So everybody had to come to me and see our nakedness. And we had all our meals pre-made, and I had all the earthly supplements. They have all these organic tinctures, and I got all my food made. And we hired someone to clean the house. We had a doula come and pick up from time to time too, and help out with the kids. I mean, I had tons of help. And then the 6-week appointment came, and this baby hasn't gained weight. Another trigger event happened at the end of my pregnancy, and that is I caught the bad virus. I just wasn't the same.
Right.
So here we are, guys. Sorry if that was really long. We have all these events. We have all these red flag events where it's just undescribable. I'm also, since I had gastric bypass, I'm having horrible hypoglycemia. And so I went to 20 different doctors to figure out, like, why is this happening? I'm not eating sugar. I'm just eating low glycemic vegetables and meat. Why is this happening? And nobody had any answers. One endocrinologist did see that I was very high in antibodies. He said to just come back when my thyroid was dead, which is horrible that is what the endocrinology plan is. Well, your TSH is still fine. So come back when your TSH is messed up, because he told me could be tomorrow, could be 10 years, you won't have a thyroid because of these antibodies. But he never said, like, how do we stop them? So I get the bad virus, and now I can't ignore it anymore. I can't go up and down the stairs without feeling literally sick. Like I need to go lay down. I can barely get my kids ready for school. My husband works on the road, so it's just me and 4 kids. We lived on 5 acres. It's a 3,300 square foot, 6-bedroom house, and then it's just like a huge driveway, lots to plow. We live where it snows every single minute year round, it feels like. Um, I can barely go up the stairs. I can barely cook food for my kids. I'm struggling to drive them to school. I start getting such brain fog that I'm having a difficult time remembering to pick them up from school. I am struggling. Every time I eat, and it didn't seem to matter what I ate, I would get so sick that I felt like I needed to lay down. I was getting food reactions every time I ate. It was to the point that I was like, I just want to give up on eating because it makes me so sick. You'd think I'd have got skinnier, but instead I just started eating like lots of butter and peanut butter. But anyway, I didn't know then that nuts were so inflammatory. But anyway, and cheese. I would eat cheese and peanut butter, easy things to eat that
Right.
are really great for the waistline. What else? And when I would drive, this is what was really difficult is we lived a half an hour from school. By the time I was on my way back, I would get so tired and drowsy that I felt like I could barely drive home. I started having terror where every night I would just hold my babies because I was afraid they were going to die. So I was having intrusive thoughts. And I know some people are probably thinking that's postpartum. This is not postpartum. I've had postpartum. There was one day I went to the gym, which is moldy, and I was on a bike because I'm still here's Adrian, barely able to go up and down the stairs, but I'm like, I'm going to go take a cycle class or spin. I'm going to take a spin class. It's not a matter of, to me, I just thought everybody was like this and you needed to just push through it. Otherwise, you're just lazy. I just needed to push through it. So I get on this cycle and I start seeing black figures. So I'm like literally hallucinating. It was so bad, Christy. It was so debilitating. And I'm trying to tell people too, sometimes I would eat and my arms and legs would go numb. And I would get so it was like my head was a cloud. It was so scary. And I would try to tell people and they were like, you look just fine. And I'm like, I'm not fine. I'm not fine. And they're like, listen, you just need to suck it up. Or maybe you need some mental health. Maybe we should commit you. Maybe you need, some psychiatric help because you look fine. And I'm like, I'm not fine. I'm not fine. My dad said one of two things. Either you need psychiatric help or you should try the carnivore diet. Because he was following Vinny, the no sugar, no grains guy. And his co-host had autoimmune and did this. I like to say too, I wasn't being honest with people about all my symptoms because I was being accused of being a schizophrenic psychopath or whatever,
Yeah.
So I go carnivore and I start to feel better, way better. My hypoglycemia instantly gone. It's never come back. The only time it came back is one time I did an experiment where I ate a couple of my kids' chips that had cheese on them. I know. Why would you do that? That made me so sick. So I have never. So the carbs are not a thing for my hypoglycemia. As long as I just stick with my meats and my fats, my hypoglycemia is gone. I've been getting such better sleep. So things got better until they didn't. And that's when I heard Judy Cho talk about chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And if you listen to her podcast, she basically tells my story. And so I went and got tested for that. But this was really really because my family's not believing me and they've never heard of this before. So they're pretty much still thinking I need mental health.
I know I hadn't heard of it till I got into this community. People were saying, first I just saw CIRS. I'm like, what the heck is CIRS? In my head, I'm like, I don't know what that is. I didn't know about that either. I didn't know it was a thing.
Yeah. They
so
thought I needed mental health, especially when I told them, listen, I can't live in this house. This house is making me sick. And that was I don't think my husband really would have divorced me, but he was like, listen, we're not moving. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. We own a 6-bedroom home. That's beautiful. it has one tiny spot of water damage. We're not moving. And I was like,
Mm,
well, something needs to change because I'm alone with these kids and I can't take care of them.
mhm.
And I'm not good at sticking up for myself at all. And so this took months. I knew I had chronic inflammatory response syndrome like in November, and we didn't move out until April. So it
Wow.
took 6 months for me to put my foot down and say, I can't live here anymore. And I don't even care if you guys aren't coming with me, except I did because I know that it's genetic. So I didn't want my kids living in there anymore either.
Mm,
Um, so we have the first guy come in, like the insurance company, because it was something from our roof. And so they covered part of it, but they did the crappiest job I've ever seen in my life. And they are a company that is known across the country for being mold remediators. So we tell them this has been leaking for a month or two, and they still open up the wall and start blowing fans all over, which you're not supposed to do after 48 hours because you're blowing mold spores all over our home.
mhm.
So they made our house worse. And I tried to tell everyone, I can't go back into that house until it's properly cleaned. And nobody listened to me. So I went back in and I got even more sick, like even worse. And so then I was like, I don't even care what, I'll live in a tent. Like, I'll be homeless. I can't live here. I'll lose my mind. I'm getting so sick. And so I moved back out. We had a second company come back in. Since then, I don't really go in the house, but we've had 3 companies in there.
Mhm.
We've tore out tons of wall. We tore out both bathrooms, the kitchen, and the flooring on the entire upstairs. We tore out all the walls in the basement. None of this is necessary, by the way. It's just now I'm publicly saying our house had water damage. We want to make sure that the house is good for the next people. But I'm so traumatized, I never want to move back into it. I'm going to be honest.
Oh,
And the
okay.
other thing
I was
is,
gonna
it's
ask
like,
you, so you still own it, but you're like, what, renovating it to sell it? Is that the deal?
yeah, so
Okay.
many issues, Christy. So we have it. It needs a
Mhm,
kitchen and bathrooms because now we've tore all the walls out. The walls have been put back in.
mhm.
The floor has been put back in, but it needs kitchen and bathrooms. And I was a doomsday prepper, and we bought 120 cords of wood, and we have to figure out what the heck are we going to do with 120 cords of wood. So if anybody
Mm.
needs wood, please contact me. Um, so anyway, so what's important here is not just so Carnivore has been one of the number one tickets to being able to feel better while I go through this what's called the Shoemaker protocol. If I was still eating those other foods that are inflaming me, I would still be having tons of food reactions. My arms and legs would probably still be going numb. I'm not going to play with it. I'm not even going to try. I don't like that feeling. So
Mm,
it's been huge. It's also one of the issues that happens when you get chronically inflamed is that your gut gets inflamed as well. And when it blows up, it gets holy and you end up with leaky gut. And then
mhm.
you end up with the bacteria, you end up with SIFO and SIBO, and you end up with all those infections because you're so inflamed and everything's opened up. And when you eat the low inflammation diet, it helps keep that at bay while you work on the root cause. Now, prior to this, I tried all the gut protocols, like $1,000 gut protocols, did
Hmm.
nothing for me. You know, I tried protocol after protocol after I tried all these supplements and it did nothing. And people were like, I don't know. If that didn't work, I don't know. And it wasn't going to work because the root of the issue is inflammation. So sorry, that was a
Yeah.
lot of
So
rambling.
do you think that Carnivore kind of got you to the place where you could think clearly and then like tackle this other stuff? Is that a good way to sort of sum up what you said?
Yes, and because the food reactions went down, I'm not sick all the time, and when you're
Mm,
sick all the time because you're eating and it's going right into your bloodstream, then you have no energy to do anything. You know, you're just sick
mm,
all the time. You're just on your side all the time. And then I was constantly like my gut looked like I was pregnant all the time. I had gas all the time, indigestion all the time. And the
Mhm.
hypoglycemia though, that's the number one thing. I mean, I would be in a grocery store with my kids and my blood sugar would drop. I was at the Mall of America with my kids, my baby and my 2 kids. I think they were 8 and 9 at the time, and my blood sugar drops in the middle of Mall America. This was
Mm.
debilitating. I could be in the middle of a 5K race and my blood sugar would drop. It was just all the time.
Huh. I know that feeling, but mine was because I starved myself. So I would be so hungry that I would stand up and like almost pass out. Like my whole vision would go black and I'd have to hold on to what was next to me and like force myself to not pass out. And that would happen 2 or 3 times a day. Just because I was just hungry, right? So my blood sugar was low because, I wasn't eating any kind of low carb, carnivore, whatever. I was just eating hard, like, 600 calories a day or something for weeks on end. And so, yeah, I was just starved. So I kind of know what you're talking about. Yeah.
And it doesn't
It's
feel good.
no, and I can't imagine. I mean, fortunately, it didn't usually happen when I was at work. It would tend to happen earlier in the morning. Like when I first got up, for some reason, I would feel like really queasy and sick and kind of like spots in my eyes. And, if I stood up too quickly out of bed, that's like when it would happen. Or I don't know, after going to the bathroom, sometimes like getting up off of the toilet and I'd like be in the bathroom, like holding on to something. Or if I took like a really hot shower, it would happen then, like getting out of that hot shower or hot bath, it would happen.
Yes. So
Mhm.
there was 2 things that made me immediately feel better, and one is the carnivore diet, and the other one is moving into a
Mm.
place that doesn't have water damage. And that's so important. And I think even people who don't genetically, so 1/3 of people are genetically predisposed to not be good detoxers. 1/3 of people. And this can
Wow.
cause anxiety, depression, bipolar. They'll blame bipolar on this. I know my limbs were going numb, and you can see brain damage when you do a scan. So some people are
Mm.
being misdiagnosed with MS, fibromyalgia, your whole body. Ooh, that's a big one.
Mhm.
When I cut the meat, or when I cut to meat, that's when I stopped being so stiff and
Hmm.
so sore. Did you have any of that?
Yeah, a little bit, like, especially in the morning. So I'd get up in the morning and everything would just kinda like, I'd have to walk down the hallway and into the other room yeah, 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 yeah. Yes, that's it. That's perfect. That's what I would look like. And then everything would just sorta loosen up,
Did
after that.
did
And
you
I just
pee at
thought, well,
night
it's
at all?
not no. I mean, not I don't think any more than, normal at it, occasionally or whatever. But,
Yeah.
mostly just
Yeah.
being really stiff when I first got up, and I just thought, well, I'm, getting into my late 30s or whatever. Now I'm in my late 40s, but, no, because now it's gotten better.
They say people can do the Shoemaker protocol and you cut amylase, whatever the amylase foods are. Um, but people who do carnivore seem to be on a quicker path to healing and feeling better than people that don't. Because some
Mm,
people, obviously, that's not their thing.
yeah.
But it is interesting that a lot of people in our community, they came because they don't feel well and they're trying to fix it with food. And then it turns out this is what it is. If you're having food reactions, and another thing, I kept getting, oh, it's hard because it's opposite. These
Mm,
white spots were multiplying all over my skin.
mhm.
And people were saying, "Oh, it's a lack of pigment." Well, how come I had pigment and now I don't? That doesn't, I
Yeah.
mean, it would seem like you'd be born without pigment there, but these spots just keep appearing. So that, and then there was something called lichen sclerosis. Have you heard of this?
Mm-mm.
It's so bad, Christy.
Do I wanna know?
It's not
Every time
really.
I hear one of these, I feel grateful that I don't have to deal with it, so hit me.
Well, a lot more people are admitting that they have this. So I had this
Okay.
itch in my private area. And I
Gotcha.
would
Okay.
go to the doctor and they'd be like, "Oh, you must have a yeast infection." And so
Yeah,
they'd
I was
throw
just
this
gonna say,
yeast
they're gonna
medicine.
tell you it's a yeast infection, yeah.
Yeah, or, "Oh, it's a bacteria." And they just keep throwing the same thing at me and it's not working. Not working, not working, not working. And
Mm.
finally I got an OBGYN with, I mean, how many OBGYNs had seen this and not said anything? And she goes, oh, you have lichen sclerosis. Yeah, that's what it is. Here's a steroid. And I was like, immediately better. Now I don't do the steroid anymore because if you cut out the food that's agitating it, you feel better. So I don't really have
Mm.
it anymore. But if you don't, this is going to be really funny. If you don't work on it, eventually your genital will seal shut.
What? Wow.
Because what's happening is your body is attacking its own body part. And so you know if you have this because it'll be white. It'll be bright white. And
Okay.
so you can see this is like an autoimmune thing. And so I remember my grandma like 20 years ago telling me, if you don't use it, you lose it. I'm sorry, this is so inappropriate.
This is
And
after
I'm
dark
pretty
talk,
sure
Adrienne. It's only noon.
I'm pretty sure she has this as well. And that she just, because I'm pretty sure that's not true, that if you don't use it, you lose it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway. So
I'll
it's been
change the
fun to
subject.
know.
We had a question from Karen. She wanted to know if you've checked cortisol.
Yes. So when after I gave birth, I started working with a functional medicine doctor, and after I found out I had no milk. So I'm not going to the other doctors anymore. They already told me I just didn't try hard enough. So I went to a different doctor, and she had me do the spit test and said that my adrenals were a mess. They were what do you call it? Adrenal dysfunction, and I was 0.1 away from the worst level of adrenal dysfunction. And I had no cortisol, and I guess that's because I had burned it all out. And once you get, at first, maybe you have high cortisol, but eventually you burn it all out and then you have no cortisol. So my body didn't know what to do with stress at all. So I get a text message from my ex-husband, my blood sugar drops. I going up and down the stairs, my body just kind of shut down. Like I couldn't handle any stress at all. There was no cortisol left. She didn't really have a good answer on how we fix it though, until the chronic inflammatory response syndrome stuff.
Interesting. So I have a personal story that your story reminds me of a lot, and I don't know why I'm telling it other than to share it, because my first school that I worked at, and I've only ever worked at two, and the only reason I went to the second school is because they closed my original school down. But anyways, it was an older building, built in the 1940s or 50s, I think. And then on top of that, when it started to get crowded, instead of building a new school, they put in portables, the portable buildings, which are supposed to have, I forget, but they only have like a 10 or 15 year lifespan for these portables. But of course, they don't take them out after, so they've been there for 25 years. And just as an example, one of my colleagues walked into his classroom one day and his foot went through the floor because it was rotted out. Like his foot just went right through the floor. And so I was young. I started when I was 23, 24, however old I was. And I worked there for the first 10 years. Actually through both of my pregnancies. So I always know how long I worked at my school because that was the same year that my second son was born. So I basically had both of my almost full pregnancies at my other school. So it was all when I was young, up through when I was about 33, 34. Anyways, my point is that a lot of especially it seemed, well, I guess a lot of the teachers were older than me, being as I was at the beginning of my career, but there were so many complaints registered to the district office regarding, I don't feel right being in these buildings. It's moldy. I know it's moldy. I've got brain fog. And honestly, they weren't telling me. I was just sort of hearing all this information like, oh yeah, it's so-and-so called because this is this. And I mean, they just weren't, their whole solution was to rip out the carpets and just put in tile. Like that was their solution. And then I think they took out that one portable where the foot went through the floor, but all the other ones were still there. One time I was in a portable where it stunk so bad, and I don't know what that was. So I am very fortunate that I don't think that I had it doesn't mean it didn't hurt me, but I wasn't feeling any physical effects, but I know numerous teachers were, and they were calling. And just think of all the kids, right? At that school, we had about 900 students, that were like in those buildings all day, every day. And yeah, it wasn't going well. So, I mean, it's sad when they closed it down to some extent, but I'm kind of glad that I got to go to a brand new building, which I've been in for 15 years now. 16 years, I don't know, a while. And so, but yeah, it just makes me wonder like how many people,
Are
are
getting
more,
sick.
like you said, like the 30% that can't, clear it as well. That was probably those teachers that were making all those phone calls, and the district was just like deaf to it.
Yeah, so here's some symptoms. So if your metabolism is really, really lacking, it might be due to an exposure you're having. So it doesn't matter I mean, you can keep exercising and you can keep reducing your food, but you just don't seem to be losing weight like other people. Or like my
Mhm.
son, he eats the same as his friends, but my son is 50 pounds overweight and they're not. And so the metabolism breaking is one of the signs that you're inflamed. Another inflammation, is having the eczema from food related. So I have a 5-year-old and he's going to start seeing my doctor this summer and I'll report back, but he shows signs of PANS pandas. Do you know what that is? It's like a neurological thing, and one of them is PANS is when it's brought on by having a strep infection, and PAN is when you don't think they've had a strep infection, but they still have the same. Like they'll have a tic, obsessive compulsive behavior, aggressive behavior. I don't remember all the things. So my son shows signs of PAN pandas, and the way that you were describing ADHD or ADD, which one is it? They're not the same, right? You're muted.
Sorry, I went to go look up Cyrex Labs because Gloria Erickson asked a question, so I'll put that up in a minute. But anyways, so that's why I was muted. I didn't want you to hear my clicky clicks. Sorry, no, ADHD and ADD, it's similar, but with the H, that's the kids that can't sit still. So it's the ADD kids that will often fall through the cracks because they'll sit there very still, but they can't focus.
Oh,
Their brain is like over there somewhere. My kids definitely have the H, which is
yes.
that, they have to move. They have all these sensory things going on and all of that. Yeah.
So both of my sons have twitches, and that is
Hmm.
super weird, and they just can't seem to explain it. Well, that's neurological, and when you have all this inflammation, it inflames your brain as well.
Mm.
So I'm hoping to get them some help. And then let's talk about okay, and then in normal people, you can just like we used to live in a 100-year-old home, and it seems like the people who bought it, I want to say I heard that they're sick all the time too. We were sick all the time in this house. We caught everything that went around. We were sick all the time. So normal people who don't have the genetic problem, they would just be kind of ill all the time or just kind of
Hmm.
feel off. Or again, it could be the bipolar, the anxiety, and the depression that just don't seem to go away because your brain's inflamed. So it doesn't matter what medications you take, your brain's inflamed. And so ultimately, you need to be in a different environment. So, how do you clean it up? Please don't bleach. I repeat,
Mm.
please do not bleach mold. It's even on the EPA website that bleach causes a chemical reaction and it does not kill the mold. You'll
Hmm.
notice it will come back. It will come back. It will come back. But not only that, every time you apply bleach on mold, your environment becomes more toxic.
Wow.
Yes. So
Okay.
please stop bleaching your mold. Use peroxide. Use hopefully food
Hmm.
grade peroxide. Use peroxide, use vinegar, something we use, which isn't like clean sounding, but we use, I think it's called Fantastic. It's a green bottle that you get at
Hmm.
Walmart because when
Hmm.
you get mold, it attracts this bacteria family called actinos. And so this whole family of bacteria and fungi grow and they feed off each other. So you have to address all of it. So Fantastic is a really good cleaner for that. But let's say my window's rotten. You need to get rid of the material. It
Hmm.
has roots. There is no painting over it. It's rooted into your material and it does seep gases through the paint. It might not do it immediately, but it eventually absolutely will. Painting
Hmm.
over it will not fix it. You have to replace the material. And then everything they say it's either 12 or 24 inches outside of the rotten material. You need to maybe sand down and then obviously contain the sawdust. And then you need to like peroxide it, treat it, and seal it. And this is the material that wasn't even water damaged, but you just want to make sure it's all contaminated because otherwise it's leaking gases into your home. And you're breathing
Yeah.
it in and it's in
So
the dust.
how do you find, because you said you hired a reputable company and they didn't really do a good job. I mean, that they had a good reputation, I should say. So how do you find, like how to find a company that's going to do all that stuff you just said?
It is so impossible. There's like 4 people in the country that can do it. So it's to the point at this point that you have to research and do it yourself.
Hmm.
It's really sad. If you live in a big city, you could probably find someone. Like I know that they're called environmental professionals, indoor environmental professionals. And they need to specialize and if you call them and you ask them, do you know what chronic inflammatory response syndrome is? And they say no, then they're not for you. They're probably going to bleach it and they're probably going to blow a fan at it. And they're
Hmm.
probably going to remove as little material as possible. So that
Well,
was
because
our experience.
it's cheaper to remove less material. Gloria
Mhm.
wants to know if we have ever used Cyrex Labs. So I will say no, I have not. I hadn't heard of them. That's why I went to go Google it real quick. The only lab company I've used, and I used them once, was just Own Your Labs. Because I heard Dr. Barry mention it, I think. And I wanted my cholesterol particle density test after I found out I was a lean mass hyperresponder. And my doctor freaked out. I had another blood test just like a week after the initial one to go because obviously she didn't do, the particle density or anything else. And so I just paid out of pocket through Own Your Labs to get that done, to find out what type of LDL I have. And so that's the only lab company that I've ever used, outside of going to my doctor for lab work. How about you, Adrian?
I used Full Script for my first one. This last one, it was like ZRT and it was out of Beaverton, Oregon or something like that.
Okay.
And then my doctor, he orders a lot of these labs, which you can see all the labs you would need to see if you have chronic inflammatory response syndrome on Judy Cho's website, Nutrition with Judy. If you look up her package, it would give you a list of every single test you could possibly run that would indicate. Now, my doctor, he runs as little tests as possible because they're expensive. So, you know, sure, I'll probably fail all 10 tests like I did when I initially did it with Judy Cho, but we really only need to know if I'm failing 1 or 2 of them. We don't need to know 10. If you fail 2, you have this. What I want to ask, I don't know, am I allowed to change the subject? I
Yeah.
have no idea what lean mass responder is, and I keep hearing that. What is that?
Oh, well, okay. I'll do my best to explain it, although I am not a medical professional or anything like that. And I only know about it through YouTube. Okay. And sometimes I kind of know it in my head and then like to explain it. So I don't probably really know it if I can't fully explain it, but I'm gonna do my best. So what happens is most people, okay, there's 3 different reactions your body can have when you kind of go on a low carb way of eating. And if you're really in the super obese category, I don't know what it's actually called, but the most overweight you can be, way down there. All your cholesterol numbers are going to get, better, meaning going toward the numbers that they recommend. If you are just, overweight or obese, they might about stay the same. But they won't get worse, they won't get better. If you are already lean and you start a low carb diet for a different reason, for health reasons or whatever, or you just don't have that much weight to lose. Like I had 20 pounds to lose according to myself when I started, but like my BMI was, I don't know what it was, but probably around 23 or 24. And I wanted to lose, that 20 pounds and get it more down to 22, 21 area, something like that. And, but particularly if you're active, like I think it might happen more in like people that exercise. Cause when I first started this, I was not exercising or super active. Um, then what happens is your body your LDL, you'll get this triad basically where your HDL goes really high. Like nobody can believe how high my HDL is. They're like, do you run marathons? Do you, because my HDL is just like awesomely high. My triglycerides, super low. And there are cutoff points for this, but I didn't memorize them. I don't know what they are. My ratio though of the HDL to triglycerides, which should be under 1.5, mine is like 0.86. So it's like this awesome ratio. And if those were the only two numbers my doctor was looking at, then by right, she should say, you are one of the healthiest people I've ever seen, right? But my LDL in lean mass hyperresponder, it skyrockets. And I think the initial point is like, it's like 250, or don't quote me, but it's somewhere like there. Mine is over 400, Adrian. And it doesn't even tell you a number. It just says like over 400 or over 450 or something. Like it doesn't even tell you what it is. That's how high mine is. And I think what happens is because at that point, when I got that first blood test, I had been sprinting and things like that. So I had gotten more active. And I was leaner than I am now too. So I'm curious to know, like, if it's come down since I've put on a few pounds, because that's one thing that can affect it. And there's a whole theory about that, about why that happens, because it's never really been observed before. Because until the low carb keto diet and low carb diet and all that got all this traction, to where even lean people were trying it, because they found out, oh, it can help with IBS, right? Or it can help with all these other things that have nothing to do with a weight issue. And so more lean people started getting on these diets for health reasons, not just weight loss reasons. And then the next thing you know, these people start presenting with this weird, triad. And the first one to really notice it and talk about it is Dave Feldman. So Dave Feldman has a channel. Go watch it. And then his partner in crime, so to speak, is Nick Norwitz. And he also has a channel. And so Dave Feldman started on his own before Nick Norwitz got involved. And there's others too, involved. And the Own Your Labs company that I mentioned is like under their, I don't know, is it a company? I'm not sure, but it's under them. And then any proceeds or whatever goes to like help their research. And you can even check a box that they can use your data, or not use your data. But if you want them to be able to use your data for their research, like anonymously, you can check a box that will allow them to do that. Anyways, Dave Feldman was like, he and his sister, so they're related, right? Like same DNA, basically. Both go on this low carb diet, and everything on her is looking, traditionally better. But he's a lean mass hyperresponder, and he's like, what? This was supposed to make me healthier. What's going on? And he's not a medical professional by trade. He's like a computer scientist, and so he's the one that I think about, 6-7 years ago, was like, what is this? And so he just like took it upon himself to start working on this. And he started doing all these N=1 like self experiments, checking his cholesterol and eating different stuff and seeing what would happen, and doing all these things like that. And then he made or generated what is called the lipid energy model. So the reason that this is happening, and this is where, you guys, I'm not a scientist, okay? But people that have more weight on their body have a nice glycogen store in their liver. So you could, like, if you listen to like Jason Fung talk or anything like that about fasting, if you're not on a low carb diet and you want to do fasting, you got to fast for like a couple days to like use up all the glycogen in your liver. And then you'll start, going into ketosis and all this other stuff, because the glycogen is now all used up. Well, in lean mass hyperresponders, we tend to be so lean that we just don't have any glycogen. And so we've got to have some other way for our body to get energy. And so what happens is that the liver is just like exporting the fats and things to go around your body. And the LDL is like, the little trucks carrying all this around and dropping it off and delivering it around your body. And because a lot of us tend to be more active, the more active we are, the higher the LDL will go, because we need more energy to support that activity level, I guess. And so they're doing studies on it now, because they're like, let's study it and find out if it's unhealthy or healthy. Like, nobody can really tell you. You will see people on YouTube say it's not a problem at all. You'll see even Dave Feldman is not saying that it's not a problem at all. He's like, it could be a problem or it could not be a problem. Nick Norwitz will say, just because it happens because of a physiological reason, like it's not pathology, right? We're not sick. We don't have, familial hypercholesterolemia, where it's some genetic thing that's causing our LDL. It's because of a dietary pattern and a lifestyle pattern and our body type, that our body is just does that to like get us energy. But whether it's good or bad, we don't really know. So that's what he'll say. Other people will say it's really not a problem. Don't even worry about it. And so, it was a little bit scary. I'll say that, like, to live over here. But I'm like, hey, I'm feeling so much better. I don't want to go back to eating carbs and get my brain fog and anxiety and all that stuff back. Like, it's just not worth it to me. So what I should do, but my doctor is just, she's not going to work with me, but, I should get a new doctor and go get a CAC score, because if your CAC score is 0, which is a calcium artery score, and you go and you get this scan and it just checks how much, hardened plaque, calcified plaque you have. And if your score is 0, even I think it's the American Heart Association or whatever, whoever does the guidelines for statins, they're like, if your CAC score is 0, then there's no benefit to taking a statin. So it'll kind of get your doctor off your back.
Yeah,
But I
you
have
should
not.
take one of those just for experimentation and
Yeah.
documentation.
Right. I know. And a fellow carnivore friend of mine did that. She's my exact age and her score was 0. So she's like, awesome. So, I looked again at that doctor. I need to call and see if she's accepting new patients, because I did find a low carb doctor that's like 10 miles from my house. I mean, just low carb according to online. It was like one of those websites where they say you can go search for a low carb practitioner. Some of the places where you can find her say she is accepting patients, and some say she's not. So I really just need to call her office. I know she accepts my insurance though, which is the part that got me really excited, because I could just be able to switch right over to her without a bunch of rigmarole. I just need to call and do it. And then I don't know. And then I would have to get to know her, right? Because I don't know, but I'm assuming if she's low carb, then maybe she's heard of this lean mass hyperresponder, and maybe she'd be willing to order me a CAC, because you can pay out of pocket, and I would totally pay out of pocket, but it's not like a DEXA scan where you can just go get one. You still have to have a doctor's order, because you can't just walk into like a lab that does, it's like the same kind of lab or the same kind of places that do like CAT scans and like that kind of stuff. And you can't just walk in with your cash and be like, give me a CAC. Like, you have to have a doctor's order. You can pay out of pocket, but they are not just going to do it because you want one, I guess. So that would be my next step. That, or eat some carbs. About 100 grams of carbs a day should take my LDL back down to like quote unquote normal, because it would replenish the glycogen in my liver if I did that.
There's no way our ancestors knew what their LDL was.
No,
They just
there's
ate
no
what they had
way.
access to.
Correct. And that was what that line of logic, because when I first heard, I was like, holy moly. Like, I thought it would be a little higher. And that's what most people say. Oh, it's like 180 or whatever. I wasn't worried about that. But when you just see like over 400 bright red, like, and then your doctor's like, you're going to die. It takes you a minute. Like, it does. I had a minute, like I had a moment. And I really thought, and I didn't change anything, but I had a moment and I thought about it. But I'm like, you know what? There's no way that those cave women were out there. They didn't know, and they were just eating their woolly mammoths and their bison and their, whatever.
Yeah.
They were in the north. They were eating their seals, and whales and whatever. So that's kind of, where I am, and I still feel really good. And I'm just, I follow, now that I know that I am a lean mass hyperresponder, I follow anything so I've subscribed to Dave Feldman's channel and Nick Norowitz's channel, and I'm following. I should have gone. They just had a conference in Las Vegas. I think I didn't hear about it until kind of it was too late. But if they have another one there next year, I'm totally going. Like, Dr. Barry was there, and that's right down the road. Like, I can drive 4 hours that way
Was that in
and
like
be
March?
there. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, I somehow
had amazing people at it.
Yes, I know. So I'm hoping there's another one like next year or whatever, and that it's in Las Vegas again, because I'm for sure going. I need to meet Dave Feldman, but I follow everything that comes out. So as of now, the people that are lean mass hyper responders, it doesn't look like they're getting this crazy amount of calcium or anything like that in their arteries, but they're just finishing up a second round of scans. And they didn't just do CACs, by the way. They did the other test, which is like more detailed, and we'll actually see the soft plaques as well. So it's like a more detailed test, but it's also costs a lot more, and you can't really get your insurance to cover it. And it can cost up to like a couple $1,000s to do it. But that's what they're using, which is a much more detailed measure. And they're just not seeing plaques in these people's arteries, soft or otherwise. I mean, a lot of them had a 0. A lot of them had like, I think everybody was under 10. So pretty good. And they were all older people. So we're not talking, I mean, the average age was like 45. We're not talking about people in their 20s who probably wouldn't matter what they ate, their score would be 0. You know what I mean? So, they just are finishing up the second round of, because they did a scan, waited a year, did another scan to see what that progression would be. And so everyone's sort of waiting on the edge of our seats, like waiting to see what that progression, if any, will be.
Interesting.
So I hope I did an okay job explaining, you guys. Like I said, all I know is just from what I've watched on YouTube. And yeah, it's just like a different way that the body traffics energy using fat to do it. And so that's why
Okay.
those numbers are so high.
It
Yep.
doesn't make any sense to me why that would damage your arteries. And I think I was talking to Laura last night, and she was saying that the calcium is from damaged arteries. It's your body's way of trying to like patch it up, repair it, take care of it.
Mhm.
Like, why would
Right.
fat damage your arteries? Where when we're eating chemicals, when we're eating seed oils, that causes incredible inflammation and damage, and that is what is causing the plaque in our blood.
Yeah. And so who knows what damage I did to my arteries the way that what I was doing to myself before, but I know my diet now is super uninflammatory and I'm not causing any further damage to my arteries. But yeah, Becky is saying just yesterday, my RN freaked out about my LDL of 331. Statins recommended. I refused and demanded a CAC. Good for you, Becky. Keep me posted. Let me know what your CAC
Yeah,
score
keep
was.
me posted.
Hopefully they ordered it for you. I'd be curious to know, are you a lean mass hyperresponder? Like, were your other numbers, what was your HDL high and your triglycerides low? Like, did you meet that criteria? That's super
Yeah, keep
interesting.
us posted.
So I will say that my doctor, and I didn't know she was going to do this, when I first got the results back, she was like, "This diet is horrible for you, and this is the highest LDL I've ever seen." And she's like in her 50s, right? So she's been practicing a while. Highest LDL I've ever seen. This is horrible for you. But she did not automatically say, "Get on a statin right now." She said, "You either need to get on a statin right now, or you need to change your diet." And so we were playing phone tag. Like she kept calling me at 8 a.m. She knows I'm a teacher. Anyways. So she kept leaving these messages. I just called her office back and said that I would work on it with diet. I didn't say I would change my diet. Notice the wording. I just said I would work on it with diet. And then I thought the conversation was over. And then about 3 months ago, because it's been about 6 months since my initial blood work, about 3 months ago, I get this call from her office saying, "Okay, it's time for your blood work." And I'm like, what blood work? Like, the doctor never said, if you're going to go with diet, then in 3 months, I want to check your bloods again. She never said that to me. So that was a total shock. And then I had another week of like pondering my life choices. Like, do I go and eat some carbs and then get this blood work? So I just haven't done it. I just haven't done the blood work because I haven't changed anything. So I don't
So,
know. I don't know what's going to happen
do you
now.
have low blood sugar at all?
I have never tested my blood sugar other than I did the fasting glucose test, because I asked for a fasting glucose and a fasting insulin when she did my blood work, and she didn't understand that, but she did agree to do it. I've never
These
owned one of those.
practitioners.
I know, she's like, "You're thin. Why?" And I was like, "'Cause I just want one." Anyway, she did it though. But I've never done the finger prick thing or worn the continuous glucose monitor or anything like that. So I don't know, but I will say that I don't have those episodes anymore where I feel like I might pass out or get like spots in my vision or my vision goes black. I don't feel that, oh, if I don't eat, I'm gonna pass it. That feeling of like,
Yes.
oh,
So
if
you're
I don't
not
eat, I'm gonna pass
shaking and
out.
sweating
Mm-mm,
and
mm.
no.
I
Okay,
used to get
so
all those symptoms.
Becky said that she tried to send this whole thing on YouTube, but it didn't quite work. Okay, so um she said a friend of hers is a lean, well, I'm guessing I'm allowed to say the name. Rachel is a lean mass hyperresponder, and that she went over to Dr. Seuss, Cywes. You know who I'm talking about, the carb addiction doctor?
Dr. Sivis. It's Dr. Sivis.
Oh, maybe I'm saying the wrong doctor. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, he has her eating more carbs in the morning, because she was dropping into the 50s at night. But Dr. Boz says that once you're fat adapted, it's totally fine to drop into the 50s at night.
Mhm. I
So I
am super interested. Yeah, all the doctors have slightly different spins on things, just like all the influencers have slightly different spins on things. It gets very confusing when you have a specific, yeah, I don't know. But I would be interested in having a CGM for like a month, let's say, just to see,
yeah.
because I have no idea. I feel good, but I don't have any idea what my blood sugars are or what things could be spiking me or not spiking me. Like I still like I use element with the stevia, the chocolate salt in my coffee, or I've actually recently switched to I still have some element left, but I've mostly switched to the keto chow salty with the coco loco flavor, which I think still has stevia in it. So I know that can spike some people. I mean, it doesn't spike me to this extent that I'm like I feel it, and I certainly don't have cravings when I have it, but that doesn't mean I'm not getting a spike. So it would be interesting for me to see if that kind of stuff spikes me or doesn't. Because I feel like if it didn't spike me, I would be fine just staying the way that I am. But if I saw that glucose, spiking
I
up
would like a
when I do
CGM as
that,
well. I think that is
right?
such valuable information.
Yes, 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 yes.
But the thing, like people who are lean can maybe have their blood sugar stays fine, but it's because they're producing the insulin to make up for it. I mean, we're all
Mhm.
producing insulin. If you're eating
Mhm.
pizza and milkshakes, even if your blood sugar is great, that just means like you're producing a lot of insulin to make up for that, and that causes people issues, hormone issues when you're over insulin. So some people say that's what's leading to infertility and stuff like that. And these lean people who look just fine, don't have blood sugar issues, but behind the scenes,
I also
they're
heard I've only heard this once, and it was I was like, "That's so true," and then, I mean, it's not so true, but it makes sense, and then it made me wanna get that CGM even more, related to what I just said about the stevia, that some people, when they'll eat those, not sugar, but like the sugar substitutes, the 0 calorie, sugar substitutes
monk
like
fruit,
stevia or monk fruit
stevia,
or whatever, yeah, they'll
sucralose.
that this is so because because you can't measure like insulin like that like instantaneously, but if you have a CGM and you eat something with that in it and your blood sugar goes down, that shows you that you're getting
Yeah.
that cephalic insulin response. Because why'd your blood sugar go down? Because you ate that, your body went woohoo, sweet things coming in, and like spiked up your insulin, which and then you're not eating actually any sugar, so then
Yeah.
your blood sugar drops. So if you notice that you eat like one of those sugar like allulose or whatever, and your blood sugar goes down after eating it, it's because you are getting that cephalic insulin response. And that's one way to know if that's happening to you. So I'm like, that
Interesting.
is
Yep.
right. I'm like, that was like doubled the reason. I'm like, oh, not only do I want to know if it's spiking me, but if it goes down, that could also be that, it's spiking my insulin, which is not good either. So
This
if you
is where
eat
the
it and it stays
disconnect
steady, yeah.
This is where the disconnect was after my surgery is I'm coming in, I'm telling you my blood sugar is dropping all the
Mhm.
time. So they would
Mhm.
continually want to give me sugar and test my blood. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that because I can tell you right now it's going to drop my blood sugar. So instead, they would run an A1C, which was perfect. My A1C is always perfect. So they're like, you don't have any issues. And they would never check my insulin ever. And I don't even know how you would exactly check it. But I can just tell you I'm a hyper insulin responder since my surgery because my blood sugar gets so low. And it's not just brought on by food, it's also brought on by stress. But for some reason, after cutting the plants, now I guess that's maybe the reduced inflammation, maybe my hormones aren't so affected.
Mm.
I never get hypoglycemia anymore.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
even those plants, which were very low in carbohydrates, were affecting my hormones and my blood sugar. And
Wow. Do you think it's because
yeah.
of well, you had the surgery. For me, I wonder how sensitive I am to that stuff just because of the super restrictive eating mixed in with the binging. Because in between those like 600 to 800 calorie, weeks, then after that, and my body was so like, that I would then binge on Oreos, ice cream, Doritos, whatever, because I just couldn't take it
Yeah.
anymore, and my self control would be over because you can't just self control yourself into starving, right? So um Anyway, and so yeah, I mean, it was horrible, and I did that for years and years and years. So that's what makes me wonder how sensitive my body really is. I just know I feel better just eating animal food than I felt doing any other. And I tried keto and I tried low carb, and those things were good. They were good at helping me control my weight without having to restrict food. But I still had the brain fog and all that, those other symptoms, the anxiety, the inflammation, my ankles would swell, that kind of stuff. I sit on the couch now with my feet, like we have one of those couches where the footrest goes up, and I sit there with my feet up, and then I just admire my ankles because they're so thin. They're not swollen.
Yes.
And it's been months since I've had that benefit, but it's like, I still look down there and go, wow. And just
Do you get the same thing with your wrist?
I had not noticed it in my wrist. It was mainly in my ankles and feet. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it didn't cure. This hasn't, cause I even went as far as lying because I'm also having perimenopause symptoms, but all this goes together. The inflammation is causing autoimmunity. The autoimmunity is messing with my thyroid and my hormones. So I tried eating lion, and unfortunately it didn't fix it, but it did give me periods of feeling better through the swings. At least there were periods of feeling better, where when I was still eating the plants, there were no periods of feeling better. Zero. I felt like crud every single day. So I'm grateful for the relief, and that I believe it's a healing diet because it's the most nourishing diet.
Mm-hmm. Do you think at Hack Your Health they'll have a place where you could get like a CGM if you wanted to? Do you think that would be like a booth that they would? I think, didn't you go last year? Is that something that they have?
I'll have to look. I know last year, I didn't know this, but they had a continuous ketone monitor company there.
Yes. Yes.
I did
Yes.
not know that, so I'd be very interested in checking that out. I think that's interesting too. I think all of it's interesting. And then
That's
I know Keto
interesting too.
Mojo is there every year. Are you getting the
Mhm.
DEXA scan?
I am getting the DEXA scan. I'm a little bit nervous. I've drunk my fair share of sodas in my life, so I'm super nervous about my bone density. But
Oh.
my mom had a DEXA scan because I told her all about DEXA scans. She didn't even know what they were, and she asked her doc. She signed up for one at Hack Your Health, but then she had mentioned it to her doctor, and in the meantime, her doctor ordered one. So she already got the results, and she is 71. And the only place where there's a slight issue is she has the very beginnings of osteopenia, like in her hips. And then the doctor was like, so, exercise, blah, blah, whatever. And she's like, is 10,000 steps a day enough? And the doctor's got this well, okay, duh, I'm talking to the wrong person. I don't know. This like sly smile, like, yeah, that's a good start, But I
Yeah.
encouraged my mom to do some like weight bearing exercises, just with some small, hand weights and things. But anyways, it was just funny. So she'll go ahead. I mean, she paid for the one at Hack Your Health already, but it'll be too soon to notice any improvements. But she's been keto for about a year or two, so it'll be interesting to see like if she keeps getting these DEXA scans, if that even in a 71-year-old, is something that can improve. Because the doctor basically said, yeah, everyone your age has that. Like that's
Oh.
what she told my mom. Everyone your age has a little bit of sarcopenia in their hips.
When you see me, and I think that you already know this, that I have absolutely no filter. And yesterday was my son's his preschool concert, and there was this grandpa there, and you would never guess he was a grandpa. I would have guessed he was 49, and I think she said he was 63, and he was ripped. And I was like, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but go you. And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, go you. I mean, and so
Awesome.
I think it's I mean, I don't know. I guess I'll learn my lesson if I'm wrong, but it seems like people who put stuff into it and are eating the proteins and the meats, that they are significantly better off than the people who are eating the standard American diet and sitting and watching TV.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
my
this
mom
guy was like,
definitely, she does not sit and watch TV. She just, like I said, about a year ago, changed her diet. Um, Even though all her friends are telling her she's going to die and everything. She's stuck to it since last April. So a little over a year now, I guess. And yeah, it'll just be interesting because I told her about the DEXA scans for the bones. And yeah, it'll just be interesting to see if she continues to get them. if it's able to improve or what happens now that she has sort of a baseline, you know?
I'm very interested. So last year I went, got my scan done, and they had nothing but positive things to say. They were like,
Mm,
you're in the top 10% or something like that. They said in bone density and visceral fat and all the blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, are you
mhm,
sure? Because I'm pretty sure I got like 40 pounds left to lose. And they were
mhm.
like, yeah, your scan's awesome. Then I heard other
Nice.
people like, I'm never getting a scan again. That was such a kick in the ass. They're like, they told me I
I'm
was 39% fat.
Yep,
And
I'm
they're
pretty
like,
sure they're gonna tell me because I think I've always been kinda skinny fat where I have I don't think a lot of visceral fat, but it's, like, subcutaneous, just kinda all over, so I'm like, they're gonna tell me I mean, my body impedance scale tells me that I'm, like, 29 or 30% fat. So I'm like, that
that's
I'm
decent.
part of me thinks the DEXA scan's gonna say, like, "No, your scale's lying to you," but the other part of me is saying, "Nope, that scale's dead accurate," and they're gonna be like, "You're a third fat."
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll be interested to see. I worked my tushy off, but I recently got very inflamed as we just continue to work on this stuff. So my current thing today was my first day trying bioidentical progesterone cream. It's my first
Okay.
day of my life of trying this. This is supposed to try to get me off. I've been having 21 day, 45-day cycles. So we're going to work on that. And then I just started T3 thyroid medicine. But I can tell you as I'm talking to you right now that I feel more energy and brain clarity already. So I'm
Okay.
excited to see how this goes. Hopefully there will be some symptom relief on top of the diet things I'm doing, on top of the cleaning up my environment.
Can I
And
ask you
I hope next year I can tell you no more brain fog. I don't need to pre-record my
your
my
interviews?
interviews with people anymore.
Question, how are you able to get that T3? Because from what I hear from various people and different times throughout the internet is that they just can't get it or their doctor or whoever just won't prescribe it. They just want to do the Synthroid or the T4. They don't want to do that T3. How are you able to get that?
I went to Dr. Grunning in Fort Myers, Florida. He's a chronic inflammatory response syndrome doctor, and so he understands um, well, first of all, he ran so many blood tests, and one of them was an inflammation marker. It's called a TGF beta 1, and mine was 8,700, and you don't want anything over, I think, a 2,000. So my TGF beta 1 is
Wow.
really high. He said that right there is what's causing my immunity, and he knows how to hopefully fix that number. That's what he does, is fix that
Mm,
number in people. So once we can get that number down, then my autoimmunity should lift up a bit. Hopefully. Hopefully, it mostly lifts up all the way, but we'll see.
yeah.
We're gonna lift up some of that
Okay.
autoimmunity, and then that's gonna relieve my adrenals, my thyroid, and my hormones. But in the meantime, he ran all my T's and my 3s, and I have plenty of T4, so I'm still producing T4. I
Mhm.
have a high T3 T3 reverse, which is
Reverse
not good.
T3.
That's
Right,
an
because it
inflammatory.
fills in the receptor and then the real T3 can't do its thing and then that's a problem.
Yeah. So, and then I have a super low free T3. So he said that
Mm,
I'm translating my T4 into T3 reverse instead of T3
yes,
free. So he
yes,
only gave me T3, which isn't
okay,
normal, but he was worried that if he gave me T4 and T3, that the T4 will just keep
to the
going into
reverse.
the reverse and so that
Yes.
it wouldn't be helpful to me. So we're on T3 only medicine. Now, is it working? I don't know. We're gonna keep going. He has some
Yeah.
other options if this doesn't work because you just don't know what's gonna go on with autoimmunity. Apparently, you can create autoimmunity against the T3 free.
Wow. Well, that's encouraging to hear that you found a good doctor. That's another thing is that my thyroid numbers were a little wonky and it's so funny cuz Dr. Berry says if a doctor's a little less bad, they'll order the THS and the T4. So I'm like I guess my doctor's a little less bad because that's what she ordered, but she didn't order the T3 or the reverse T3. So what I know is that my TSH is elevated, like above the range, but my T4 is normal, which I think is why she's like, oh, well, then she's fine. Like, I'm not
So
fine.
she absolutely should have run your T3 then
Right, 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 right.
because a
But
high TSH is a symptom of hypothyroidism.
correct, ma'am. And I've always felt kind of tired and, all of that. And then I got on carnivore and it helped like so much, but I still think I have this underlying thyroid thing. And so and my nails are a little bit brittle and some other symptoms like that I'm like I think I have this, But at the point when she saw my cholesterol, she did not want to talk about thyroid. She did not want it because I said, "What about that?" Nothing. She just would leave messages about what am I going to do about this cholesterol number? So that's another thing I'm hoping is that if I get this other doctor, that I can get her to maybe she's a little more knowledgeable about that and would run those other numbers and then get me the right medicine should I need it, because I've been doing iodine and I haven't, like the main thing I'm looking at is my nails, because they're just brittle and they have those little ridges in them.
Do you have the hangnail stuff? Because I'm sitting here
Yes.
picking my
Yep.
hangnail.
Yep. Little
And then I have
hangnails all the time. Super
yeah.
flimsy and brittle nails that just kind of peel, and they have those like vertical ridges. So
Yes, the
that's a
lines in them.
thyroid.
We were like, I don't understand where that
Yes.
came from.
Yes, it's a thyroid symptom. That with my fatigue throughout my life and, the hair, the periods of shedding hair and things like that. And then now that I get this test and I'm like, well, I listen to Dr. Barry. I know that TSH being like that is not where, it's a problem. But she just totally glossed over it. Well, in my second round of blood work, she wanted to test it again, but like the same 2 tests. And then my vitamin D was a little low. She wanted to test that again, but she didn't want to do anything for me before. And I didn't want to go get those tests because she was just going to look at I knew that my LDL was going to be the same because I didn't change my diet. So that's kind of what stopped me from, and I really think she's very traditional. So I think she just would have said, here's your Synthroid. And
Yes.
that's not what I want.
Nope, you definitely need to see someone else. I shared some stuff from Gloria just in case it could help other people. I know there's
Yes.
also a Facebook group, Stop the Thyroid Madness, that people have found really helpful. But overall, you just wonder, why isn't my thyroid functioning? What is the root of that? And if you even if you don't think it's like a mold, like my chronic inflammatory response syndrome, I don't think it was triggered by mold at all. It only became an issue after my 10 triggers.
Right.
But then it became an issue. But anyway, so survivingmold.com has these doctors who can help you with fibromyalgia, who can help you with bipolar, who can help you with MS, who can help you with a whole range of things. Maybe they can't help everyone, I'm sorry, but I feel like they can because they really go to the root. To me, the more I dig into this, the more it seems like the root, because I'm from Minnesota, the root of everything is inflammation. And then it's like, well, what did the inflammation cause you? What problem? Because it'll cause a different problem for different people. But ultimately, it seems to be inflammation is binding people up. And then as your body doesn't know what to do, because it's overinflamed, that's when it starts responding, and it responds inappropriately. And that's where we're getting all this disease. That's just my opinion.
Yeah.
I think a lot more people have inflammation problems than they realize that is the root. But how to address the inflammation is going to be different for people. Like Rebecca Heichman tested positive for chronic inflammatory response syndrome. I don't think she did the Shoemaker protocol. She did meat, supplements. She did something else. And I've heard of other people too who've done other things. Like the path to de-inflaming ourselves is not the same for everybody.
Agreed. But, I had never heard the word inflammation really until I got into this community. So I don't think the majority of people even know what you're talking about, and then I would hear this word inflammation. And I was like, what the heck even is inflammation? Like in my head, but everyone was like, inflammation, and you're going to eat meat and it's going to lower your inflammation. I'm like, I don't know what that means. That's what in my head.
Well, for starsies, the first week you do it and you lose 5 pounds.
Right. And so, I mean, just over finally, just through occasionally, right, a certain very small percentage of the videos would explain it. And then finally, when I understood what it was, I think I made a video a long time ago, more at the beginning of my channel, like inflammation, what is it? Because I'm like, oh, I know what it is now. And I can explain it.
Yeah.
So crazy. But yes, I think your genes, right, and how they're expressed kind of that's going to matter where that inflammation is going to get you.
The genes too, yeah. But just because you're 1/3 of the people doesn't mean that you have chronic inflammatory response syndrome. You need trigger events still. And then you need your body to respond that way because of the trigger event. So just because you're 1/3 of the people doesn't mean 1/3 of the people have chronic inflammatory response syndrome. But I do think that a lot more people have it than they even know. When I hear people talking all the time, I'm like, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. But on the other hand, I don't want to tell anybody because it's been
Mm,
a nightmare. It has been devastating. We lost
mm,
everything. We lost everything because in our home that was full of water damage, now all your materials are full of that bacteria and that fungus, and you can't get it out of blankets, and you can't get it out of couches, and you can't get it out of beds. We lost everything. All my
mm,
kids' toys are in a trailer because I was too sick to clean them for them. So they lost
mm.
everything. And then we moved into a camper because we didn't know where to go. And so we could only have a few things. So I don't really want to tell anybody they have chronic inflammatory response syndrome.
Yeah, because you feel like once they go down that rabbit hole, it might be a whole,
It can be
yeah,
devastating. It
a
can break up
devastating thing.
marriages. People told me their
Mm,
family stops talking to them because they think they're nuts. But I can
mm,
tell you that if you think you have this, you really can get better. Like, you don't
yeah.
have to take like a doctor would throw different medicines at me for the rest of my life, and that would never make me better. But
Mhm.
I have gotten so much better. You can get better. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's a double-edged sword.
Well, I've definitely had when you said the thing about all in your head, it reminded me because when you were telling me what your dad had said to you about you either need to go to like an institution or try carnivore. I have had people, close people in my family, ask me if it wasn't just all in my head, like my mental health symptoms, like my brain fog. Is you're just that's just in your head, or your anxiety. You sure that wasn't just in your head? Um, like family
I wish
members.
more people could get I had a neuroquant done, and, like, I'm trying to explain to my husband how I struggle to book a hotel. He constantly would leave the taxes on me, and I would tell
Mm.
him, "I struggle with computers," and I do. The fact that you got me to start doing this YouTube thing is a freaking miracle. Um, I struggle
Love
with
you.
computers. I struggle with reading. I struggle with, dates and times. Like, I thought this was an hour later, and thank God I got a reminder because I would have missed it. I was
Mm,
missing my son's band concert, and people were like, "Why don't you just write it down?" Well, because I literally have, like, dementia. And do people with dementia remember what they wrote down or that they
mhm,
even wrote something down? I mean, honestly, I walk around still because when I get later on in the protocol, this should get better, but I walk around still only living in the moment, which is honestly kind of a good thing as an anxious person, but I only live in the moment because I literally have no idea what's later today. I have to look at what I wrote down. And so the brain and so anyway, I wish everybody could have this scan because you would see it's not in your head. Your brain is
mhm,
inflamed, or
mhm,
your memory gland is inflamed, which can
mm.
come down, but yeah, I wish more
Yeah.
people could have. It's the same thing with the autism and the ADHD. I wanna say they can see that on a brain scan somehow. And so
Hmm.
then people would stop saying, "Oh, you just need to parent better," or whatever
Yeah,
they think.
that one
Or
gets me.
stop overdiagnosing.
Yeah, oh, yes. So just, yesterday so we'll see. This is, like, the beginning of who knows what'll happen, but, we're closing out the school year, next school year is coming. So I've got this new group of, current 4th graders that are gonna be in my class, and a couple of them have parents that are, like, on the PTO and all that, so they're, like, always at the school, they're involved in all this stuff, right? So this one mom is telling me about how I'm gonna have her daughter in my class, and that but it should be better because, and she's telling me all the things. So she's gonna get the ADHD officially diagnosed. That way we can actually have the interventions and et cetera and so on. And she's just telling me all kind of all about that stuff. And I said, my both of my kids have ADHD, and my younger son, I told her I changed his diet, and I didn't tell her what diet. I just said I changed his diet, and it's been like a night and day difference. And I said, I have to go right now, but if you're interested in hearing more about that and how that worked for us, let me know. And she said, I'll come talk to you. We'll see. We will. I know. I'm like, come on.
It's really
So,
hard. Like,
yeah.
yesterday at school, they did something with graham crackers and marshmallows, and I'm thinking, "Please don't give that to my son."
They
But
will
then
though, because they usually do like some kind of camping thing, right? It was like a camping s'mores,
yeah.
right? See, I know. I work in a school. Yeah, that's
Well,
typical. That's pretty like standard for end of the year, especially with it. Like in fifth grade, we don't do that, but like first grade does a whole thing like that, a whole camping themed day, and they have s'mores with that stuff in it.
Gloria is just full of info. Why isn't my brain working?
Okay.
That's interesting.
Thank you so much,
Unfortunately, I have
Gloria.
difficulty reading, so I don't wanna pile any books up on myself.
But I
I did
wonder
do
if there's an audiobook. Can you do audiobooks?
kind
Does that
of. My
work
brain
better?
kinda goes, "Pew." Well, I try to listen to audiobooks for some well, I think it's because I also have, like, a lot going on, the little kids are running
Mm,
around screaming, and, like, yesterday, they thought it would be fun for one person to hide under the blanket and then the other person to jump off the couch onto them,
mhm,
because 'cause they're 2
mhm.
and 5.
Right, I don't miss those days. Like, I know like, sometimes I look at their little pictures, like, their little faces are so cute, and it's like then I get a little sad, but then you tell me stuff like that, and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I don't miss those days."
Like, are you trying to kill each other? Like,
Yes.
they don't realize that, like, once you're dead, you're dead. They don't
Mhm,
get it. They don't
mhm,
understand breaking necks. They don't and I'm like, "Oh, why
mhm,
are you doing that?" I'm not even gonna tell you what Vollmer did what my 2-year-old did to my
mhm,
5-year-old. All
mhm.
I wanna
Yeah,
say is that there was screaming, and I thought we were gonna have to go to the hospital.
yeah.
But, well, thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about this. I hope we can raise awareness, and, I hate talking about it because it was a really hard year. We moved 5 times
Mm,
because we moved into an Airbnb, then back into our house, then back into the Airbnb. Temporarily, it was really expensive. So then we moved into the camper, then the camper got contaminated, so then we moved again. I moved 5 times,
mm.
and every time I moved, I had to clean every single belonging that came with us, and I had to do it all by myself while feeling sick.
Yeah, terrible.
And
Um,
so I feel a lot better though. If we had to
yeah.
move today, I don't wanna move today, but if we had to, I think I could do it.
You could tackle it. That's awesome. Well, I'm so glad we met, and I'm so glad
Me
that we
too.
are lionesses together. Last little story. My husband sent me this picture of a license plate he saw, and he's like, "I think this is one of your lioness followers," and the license plate was legit RAWR like 12 or something, and I was like, "I need that license plate right now, RAWR."
Awesome. I
Anyways, it was funny. I was like, "Oh, that's awesome." So
I
anyway,
think, Kelly Hogan's is Eat Meat.
Oh, that's awesome too. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, Ellie's like roaring in the chat. Yeah.
It is a little weird without her here.
I know. It feels like we're missing someone. Who could it be? But anyway, thanks for coming on and chatting. And I knew this would be a great topic. So I appreciate you so much. And I guess I'll see you if I don't see you before Tuesday. I'll for sure see you Tuesday.
Sounds good. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Bye. And thanks everyone for watching.